Lesson 1.7 lecture, Exponents, Order of Operations, and Averages. I'm on page number 67. Going to go over some things that may be new. A lot of the stuff we've done up to this point may have just been review for you, but today we'll probably get into some things that maybe you've not heard of before. First thing we're going to talk about is called an exponent. An exponent is the name we give to a number, and some of you have seen this before, where we have a number up here, a little tiny number, and it's in the upper right hand corner. That is called the exponent. This 3 here is called the base, the 4 is called the exponent. So that's what we're going to talk about for a few minutes, and what in the world that means. It's actually just a shortcut method of saying that we want to take this 3 times itself this many times. It does not mean 3 times 4. A lot of you will get confused with that. I've seen students in upper math classes get that confused, and even though they know better, and multiply 3 times 4 and get 12, when actually it's 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So you're going to take 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 and get 81. So 3 to the 4th power is actually a way of writing 81. So that's what we're going to be doing in this lesson, using some of those and some various other things, but that's what an exponent is. So let's do a little bit of practice with the exponents. If we have 4 squared, that's the same as 4 times 4, which is 16. If I have 2 to the 4th power, that's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which is going to be 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. What some folks do is they will take these two and these two, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, and then get their 16 that way. Instead of 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. It doesn't really matter. If you remember with multiplication, you can multiply in any order you want. You'll still get the same answer. There are a couple special names. If we have a 2 up here, or if we have a 3 up here, this is another, you can say 3 to the 2nd power, or 3 squared. Okay? It's another way of saying it with an exponent of 2. This one you can say 4 to the 3rd power, or 4 cubed. Not really sure where those names or those terms came from, but 2 and 3 are the only ones that kind of have a nickname for them. So you don't have to say 3 to the 2nd power, you just say 3 squared. 4 to the 3rd power, you just say 4 cubed. Other than 2 and 3, you will be saying, if we have 8 with a 6 as our exponent, it will be 8 to the 6th power. And that will tell you it's 8 times 8 times 8, 6 times. So, 8 to the 6th power. Brings us to different types of powers. If we have 8 to the 2nd power, we said that's the same as taking 8 times 8. If we have 8 to the 1st power, we're not multiplying it. See, this 2 tells me how many times I'm multiplying this 8 times itself. Well, if I have a 1 here, I'm not multiplying the 8 times itself. I'm not multiplying the 8 at all. So I just get my original number back. Does not matter what number this is. If there's a 1 here, erase the 1 and it's this answer. Okay, now another one. Let me see. If I put a 0 up here. Now this gets a little tricky, and maybe later on when we get into exponents a little more deeply, I'll show you why this is true. But for right now, any number at all, I cannot emphasize that enough. It does not matter what that base is. If it has an exponent of a 0, the answer is always 1. If I have 3x squared y to the 4th power, and I put a 0 up there, it's all of this to the 0 power, which means it equals 1. Always, always, always. So, makes it real easy because there's a lot of problems you won't have to completely figure out. If you see that 0 up there, you know you're done. Which brings us to another part in this section on page 69. called the order of operations. Order of operations just basically means in what order do I do the math in. Some people had to come up with some rules, just like in grammar you had to learn certain rules in order for things to make sense to you. So I have a sentence up here that says Bob said John is tall. Well, what does this mean? Does it mean Bob said John is tall? Bob said John is tall? Or does it mean Bob said John is tall? So who's tall in this one? Bob's tall in this one. The other way I had it, John was tall. So it depends on where you put the punctuation on what that means. Same rule applies when it comes to math. There's certain punctuation and it tells you how to do the math based on that punctuation. For example, if I have 4 plus 5 times 2, well, does this mean 4 plus 5 is 9 times 2 equals 18? Or does it mean, remember that 18 there, or does it mean 5 times 2 is 10 plus 4 equals 14? Problem is we get two different answers. Which one is right? Well, that's up to you or to the book to determine what kind of punctuation they're going to use in order to tell you what you need to do first. So for example, if I put these in parentheses, that means I do that first. 4 plus 5 is 9 times 2 is 18. Let's rewrite this again. If I put these two in parentheses, it becomes 5 times 2. I do what's in the parentheses first, is 10 plus 4 is 14. So depending on how they punctuate the math problem is going to determine what kind of an answer you get. So if they punctuate it this way, they want as an answer 14. If they punctuate it this way, they want as an answer 18. Just like when we punctuated the Bob said John is tall. It depends on what we wanted it to say. So there is a certain order of operations, and it uses the acronym PEMDAS. That's one of the ways of writing it. Some folks like to remember an acronym, Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. And the way this works is parentheses. After you write the parentheses, let's just go ahead and write the whole word. Then we're going to do exponents, and we'll get into what all this means in just a minute. And after we do our exponents, we do our multiplication, and then our division, and then our addition. Spell subtract right would help. Subtraction. Alright, what I see on papers all the time, in fact tests, I really suggest doing it, is when you get a test, top of the page, you write PEMDAS, just so you remember the order of operations, because if you do not remember the order of operations, again, you will get problems wrong. So, if we don't have any grammar, or punctuation here, and we have 4 times 8 minus 2 times 6, let me write PEMDAS right here. Alright, so how do we solve that if we don't have any order of operations? Well, it says do everything in parentheses first. Don't have any. Do everything with exponents. Don't have any. Multiplication. Multiplication. You do your multiplication from left to right. 4 times 8, 32. 2 times 6, 12. Do all the multiplication. Division. Don't have any. Addition. Don't have any. Subtraction. 32 minus 12 is 30. And then you know you've got the right answer. Alright, so I'm going to shut this off, go into a second section of this. This is a rather long section, and get started again with 1.7b.